Hello and welcome back to another chat and this perspective series. And I'd like a brief follow-on chat from the previous video where I talked about the thymus secrets, about how we could check the level of our vital energies through this kinesiology. And there was another aspect of that book I mentioned last time, the Your Body Doesn't Lie by John Diamond, which I wanted to also bring into a larger social context. And last time I talked about how we should be aware of the food we eat, the people we connect and mingle with, our environment, and the sounds and music we hear, the food we eat, etc. There's another element in the book which I thought was interesting, and it's how our vital energies respond to certain symbolism. And again, John Diamond, the doctor, over many years did hundreds and thousands of tests on different subjects, and he also tested photos, pictures, symbolism. And an interesting note here is that, for example, he did a testing of a very famous, well-known picture, drawing, painting, very well known in North America, called American Gothic, which is this one here. And you're probably familiar with this in this picture through certain reprints. And when he tested people's reaction to this, he tested reactions to many pictures, but always on this picture, people had a kind of negative response. That is, their vital energies decreased. And he wondered why. It's just quite an innocent looking picture. So what he did was he blanked out certain areas and then tested the reaction to see which part of the picture people were responding to. And the part which he found people were negatively responding to was the pitchfork. And he tested that on various types of pitchforks. He modified them, changed them, and when they changed them, there was no reaction, i.e. it didn't decrease the vital energies. It was only when he did the traditional pitchfork that it decreased the energy. And that's interesting because the pitchfork, or the trident, as it's known, is quite a mythological symbol. And what immediately springs to mind, of course, and maybe this is why it affects people's vital energies, is that the trident has been associated with what in biblical terms we know as the devil. The person in red with the horns, with the trident, with the pitchfork, and so it may be because of that association. But what it brings out, of course, is that whether we realize it or not, certain symbolism subliminally has an effect on our vital energies. And he went on to test some more. And here we have two images of the cross. The one here, which is the traditional cross with the elongated vertical line. And here we have a kind of standard cross, one which is used more in orthodoxy and other ways. And he found that people had a negative decreased vital energy reaction to the traditional cross with the elongated vertical line. And this is something which hardly needs to be said, but is a centerpiece of symbolism for Western society for the last 2,000 years. And of course, this is not, I'm not making a religious observation here. I'm not making any criticism either. But of course, many commentators have said, why would you worship an object of execution to represent a spiritual religious path. But if this symbolism has been used for the last 2,000 years, I know, of course, that the religious path has given much hope and much deliverance to people. That's the path. That's the understanding and faith in the Christ. But we have to look at the symbolism of the institution around that path. And if this symbolism has been tested to have a decrease in vital energies, then that's something that we should wonder about and ask ourselves, why is that happening? What other forces are involved to make that symbolism have an effect of decreasing our vital energies? And also, another symbol was the swastika. Now, this swastika is the original swastika that's been used for centuries and centuries, as we know, of course, as a Sanskrit symbol. And the original meaning in Sanskrit of the swastika is that it is conducive to well-being, and generally has come to represent the sun. And of course, we know that National Socialism, the Nazi Party, reversed the swastika and used it as their emblem. And of course, the reverse swastika then represents the black sun. And sometimes the planet Saturn has been associated with the black sun. And it is that reversal which causes, of course, the decrease in vital energies. So what we have here is a potential reversal. And interestingly, the Rosicrucians refer to this in the Deus Inversus, the reversed God, and that this action of the reversed God does have counter-evolutionary effect or potential. And I've talked about this as well in an essay I published previously called Life in Reversal, and I'll probably put the link below, but it's on my webpage under my essays. And that a lot of counter-evolutionary forces use the tactic of putting things in reverse and then presenting that as the norm, and many kind of aspects of behavior, and that has now almost been accepted as the norm. You know, the warfare and the violence against one another. It just seems, oh, it's part of the human condition, but it's not. It's reversal of the human condition. And also the symbolism that we're now getting through our culture industry. And again, I've talked about previously in the last video about how music can lower the vital energies. And if you see some of the music videos today, I mean, it goes without saying, the symbolism, the occult symbolism, which has been well talked about by many online commentators, the sexualized symbolism, and if such seemingly innocent symbols like a pitchfork in a painting of a farmer can create a decrease in vital energies, we have to wonder about the symbolism we see also online. And I mean, for example, recently I was forced to watch a perfume advertisement that Lady Gaga did for her new perfume, and it's a 5-minute video, which is, to put it bluntly, horrendous. It's dark, it's occult, it's demonic. And again, I'll put the link below, and if you fancy it, please watch it and give me your comments. For this to be a perfume video, it's, I have no more comments, but if you see it, you'll know why. And this is coming out in mainstream media. Of course, we have a lot of, gruesome films coming out, slasher movies, the Saw movies, all this where you have human not only execution but torture and more. So all this is coming into us as symbolism, which can not in any way increase our vital energies. And we may not realize how what I call counter-evolutionary forces, those forces which pull us back from inner development and the developmental impulse, are around us all the time. But, we most often don't realize them because they are unseen, because they are in subliminal transmission. And interestingly, as I mentioned in the previous video about this thymus, this doctor, John Diamond, has talked about how certain stimuli that affects the vital energies can have a switching effect. And the switching effect is when you lose the coherency between your hemispheres. They kind of, they switch this, they're working. The left and the right should be in coherence and balance. And and interestingly, this similar subject came out in a few videos previously called magnetic mind fog, when I talked about how the decreasing of the magnetic shield could have an effect on our cognition. And I read out from the internet that comment about that music teacher who talked about the music students, some of them, one in particular, couldn't balance their left and right and were mixing them up. Well, that mixing up your balance, your left and right hand, your function, is a clear indication of switching the hemispheres. As another friend pointed out to me recently, that's similar effect when one has a stroke, in that your hemisphere either shuts down or you have obviously impaired functioning. So we are unaware of how our hemispheres could be switched or impacted by the symbolism in seemingly innocuous things like music and films and videos and even pictures and art. But I think we do obviously need to be mindful of that as much as possible, that we should be keeping an inner gaze, an inner eye on how we feel. And if we feel a bit queasy when we see or watch something, or if we feel a bit unbalanced by something, then we know that we've been affected by it emotionally on a cognitive level, and we should make a note of which impacts to stay away from and cut off from. So I just thought I'd kind of add this on to the previous video as a continuation of these particular symbolic impacts. We don't live in a neutral environment. That's something we should be aware of. We are living in an environment which is very heavily, and more heavily so in recent times, manipulated and interfered with. So it's definitely not, especially if you're living in urban areas, or you are very much involved in a busy lifestyle, a digital lifestyle, much, very heavily into, the world systems or systems of life. The impacts are less, of course, if you have a more rural, sedentary, quiet, contemplative life. But of course, most of us do not. And therefore, we should be more mindful of the impacts that we have. These are the times, as I've mentioned repeatedly, as the chaotic attractors, as the energy and frequencies start going into chaos and turbulence, because of course new energies and new frequencies are recalibrating. During that time, we really need to keep a balance so we can move through this with as least disruption as possible to our state of being. So that's just my thoughts for today in Perspectives, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.